legacy cannabis and modern cannabis. There's a lot of tension, right? Because outlaws don't want to fill out paperwork. But we're going to have a whole panel about it. And to lead us into this discussion, the head of research for alcoholic drinks and cannabis for the Euromonitor International, please welcome Spiros Valandrakis.
One, two.
Walk down. As a team. Woo-hoo.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you've had a bit of time to digest. It's a little bit less busy than before, but I'm sure many more will be arriving very shortly. Thank you. My name is Spiros Valandrakis. I lead the research for alcoholic drinks and cannabis at Euromonitor International. I wanted to also clarify earlier that the alcohol industry is not actually against cannabis in any way. You can take my word on that. Most of them are looking at it as a great opportunity rather than something to stop. I think there's a bit of paranoia in the cannabis industry about that. And with that out of the way, I would like my esteemed friends here to introduce themselves one by one before we have the conversation, which I'm sure is interesting for everyone.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jorge Sanchez, better known as Waxplug in the industry. I'm the co-founder of Chemtech and founder of Waxplug Academy, which is a platform for teaching courses on how to do extractions. Been in the industry for about 8 years, extracting, and it's a pleasure to be here, and share with you guys.
Hello, my name is Andrew Friedman. I'm known as the Cannabis Sommelier. People know me around the world for helping teach people to pair cannabis and wine together and build those parallels in the industry. I'm very fortunate to be the author of Terpenes for Well-Being and won an International Publishers Award, amazingly. So if you want to learn more about terpenes, please check out the book. Today, I'm the CEO of Cannabis Tolling Solutions in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. We make vape pens and diamonds in sauce and infused pre-roll input for about 55 SKUs across the country. I've been selling weed my entire life. I am truly legacy to legal. I'm really humbled to be on this panel with such amazing guests, and yeah, I'm looking forward to having the discussion.
How's it going? My name is Marcus Richardson, aka the Bubble Man. Sort of claim to fame is that I helped pioneer water extraction, coined the term bubble hash back in the late 90s, and have just done a ton of stuff since then in the industry. I have an LP as well in Canada that we produce and do white labeling and do branding, and then I have the Bubble Man brand that's in a bunch of different states right now across the US. And just also very happy to be here with these guys on the panel, and hopefully we get into some good convos.
Is this on? Hello, I'm Tyler Kearns, owner and CEO of Seven Leaves. I've been in the industry since 2008. I actually grew up in the industry up in Humboldt as a child. And now Seven Leaves is an indoor cultivator. We harvest every week. I have about 450 locations in California, some in Arizona, and I'm excited to be on the panel and with these folks as well and hear your discussion. Thank you.
And the reason I wanted to ask them these questions in the beginning and introduce themselves as we were having the conversation earlier in the green room as well, it was a realization that the stories, all the great stories that these guys have to share are essentially a glimpse or a snapshot of the narrative of this transition that we're talking about from the legacy markets into the fully branded legal market of the future. So I would like to start with asking everyone the question of what is the role of stigma that already in the previous panels we kind of heard already that even in legal markets, even in Canada, after 7 years of legalization, this is still not gone. How do you see that evolving or changing over time in Canada or North American markets that you are much more familiar with, or potentially even in Germany? What is your prediction about moving away from this kind of cannabis bad, the devil's lettuce kind of approach that still haunts some segments of society?
Yeah, I'd love to go first if nobody minds. I've been really fortunate to be an ambassador of culinary cannabis all over the world. And the idea of the cannabis sommelier was really to take the parallel of wine, a multiple thousand-year-old industry, and show people that cannabis was really a very similar product from the people, the places, even the structure, the trichome head being a glandular head and a circle, same with a grape. One you light on fire, one you have to ferment. And when you deal with those intoxicating values and you have that same discussion, but back at the dinner table, it's a really great way to start pushing that stigma. Obviously, there's a huge debate between combustible cannabis and reduced risk, or like a vaporized product. That's why we focus on making those 2.0, those vaporized products, with less smell, with less interruption to somebody's life. It's a really easy way to break down that stigma, have medical value and an intoxicating value, however you want it. And like Marcus said, civil disobedience is the best way to break stigma. So I'll let him talk about that, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I mean, stigma's a tough one. It came over 100-year period of propaganda that was like influenced massively by Hollywood, who of course is exporting their stories all around the world. If you look back, 30 to 40 years ago, and you look how cannabis was portrayed in any TV show, in any movie, it was always the brain-dead stoner. It was always the hey, what do you mean, man? It was always this really negative stereotype, and what they always did was they always honed in on the most magical medicinal benefits of cannabis and then turned them into stereotypes and negativities. So, if I'm eating AIDS medication and I'm dying of wasting syndrome, I can use cannabis to increase my appetite. Oh, that's called the munchies, ha ha ha. And it's sort of belittling. So it took 100 years of massive propaganda to make cannabis as illegal as it was, and the stigma to be as strong as it was. I don't think it's going to take nearly as long because we pass information so much quicker today. But in Germany in particular, Germans are very staunch. There's a lot of Germans that are like, it's illegal, I'm not touching it. I think it'll take some of those people a little bit longer before. I mean, listen, all you have to do is get a little bit older and realize how much it can take away your pain and reduce inflammation. And then it doesn't matter what you believed at one point in your life. You're sold and you're taking it for the rest of your life. So,
Tyler, Jorge, your opinions about this destigmatization?
The stigma is real. I think on the getting from the plant stigma to the business stigma, it's important to, I guess, with Seven Leaves and MTG, we come almost go over the top to be as efficient as a business as possible, to make every phone call back, to never be late, to never show up to a meeting with red eyes, because then you get the jokes, immediately come. It's like, oh, they're 5 minutes late, they're probably in the parking lot token, and really trying to combat it, to combat the stigma constantly with good business practices, with not having advertising that falls victim to the Hollywood stuff that he was just speaking of, trying to keep it as professional as possible, because yes, now it is $1 billion business, and it needs to have, still needs to be hip and have that that feel that you get when you're high, but also having the professionalism to counter the stigma, and to then have that be a word-of-mouth chain reaction. Hey, you know what? We did do a real estate deal with these guys in the cannabis industry, and it worked out great. They were very professional, very smooth, and very understanding, and that just slowly chisels away at that very large sculpture that is the stigma.
I want to make a comment too. The hardest transition for me, especially as a CEO, has been gaining the acumen and professionalism of a CEO in $1 billion industry. I sold weed my whole life, and so spending the last 10 years as an entrepreneur in this business, to pair what Tyler said, has been hard, and to get that level up and to present that to people. But I also still do like doing business the most in a parking lot over a joint with weed guys. If anybody's got a joint.
Would you agree with that?
I agree. I actually agree with everything they said. Just want to point one thing out is, in my experience in the industry, I've seen a lot of the stigmas come. I mean, they're inevitable. Like, if you're going to be creating products, you're going to encounter some of these things as you go through the process. So it really comes down to a battle of just really up to all of us here in Germany to make sure that we educate people as much as we can. Through education is where we're going to be able to break these stigmas and show people that a lot of them are false or just misinformation being spread for whatever reason. So yeah, I mean, I agree with everything everyone said. It's just making sure that you share as much as education as possible to not allow that overflow into here. A lot of them are already kind of proven wrong since we've done a lot of research already in, say, the U.S. and Canada side. So that, with that, I believe here in Germany, it shouldn't be too much of a problem as long as education is readily available for everyone.
And these are all great points. I obviously agree with everything that was said. Education is a core pillar of all that. So we're starting that, and we start with your stories, how you transition from the legacy market to the legal market, the problems or the learnings that you had in this process, the whole kind of central point of stigma in this conversation. And the next one for me, the question that I think everyone would be interested to hear about, what is your take on the German market and the legislation as it appears to start being formulated right now? Is it, do you see it as a positive? Do you get, are you optimistic about the next stages of its evolution? What do you expect to happen in the next 3 to 5 years in Germany when it comes to this transition? We start with you. We can take it all the way.
So for me, I see it's kind of like going back in a time machine. So it's in U.S., I'm from California. In the U.S. side, we started with Prop 215, which was kind of like semi-legal, and I believe it's kind of like what most governments are going to do to kind of test the waters and get a feel for the market first. So it's going to happen kind of like the same, evolve throughout the process as education comes along. So I believe, it's going to evolve, for the German market, it's going to really blow up. We have a lot of companies now that are established. The industry as a whole is a lot more mature. There's a lot more equipment available now. So I believe it's a good time for Germany to legalize and introduce all these companies and products into the market.
The policy, any forward policy is good policy. Never forget that. Government never works quickly. Anybody who's lobbied understands that anytime somebody wants to parrot one of your ideas, especially when it goes all the way to passing a legal bill for legalization, is a massive, massive step. I'm a fanatic about critiquing legalization and the rollout in different states within Canada, and I have to constantly remind myself, any progress is good progress. We can smoke cannabis, we can have the opportunity to have regulated businesses and talk about this in an open and normal and professional format. That's the big win. Now, as far as...
Do you see that in Germany as well?
It's been awesome. Like, I got here, I smoked a cigar in the lounge, and the guy was like, you can smoke a joint if you want. I was like, wow, this is fantastic. But on the plane, the woman behind me, as I mentioned, I was going to a cannabis conference, said, oh, no, you shouldn't mention that so loud. And I thought, it's so interesting to see the destigmatization. And I think the reality of what's going to happen in Germany, because the social club rollout maybe won't be the best model, that's probably where the bottleneck's about to exist in your new framework. There'll be lots of weed, there'll be lots of extracts. It'll be really hard to actually pertain it. And I think the medical system is the one where you're going to see a lot more traction, just like in the early 2010s in Canada, with doctors signing different prescriptions and having more of a mail order cannabis system. That's kind of my prediction. But I don't think, we're from Canada. There's Canadians, North Americans, California. Like, we're in Germany because of legalization. That is a huge win.
And what's the Bubbleman's take?
Well, I also agree with Andrew in the sense that any forward motion is a win. It takes a long time to move these things forward, but the thing that I'm the most happy about is the shift in power, where the German police will lose power and the German people will gain power. When you allow cannabis to be legal, the smell of cannabis will no longer legally be a reason for the police to be able to search you. They're not going to carry scales around with them and weigh what you have, and it's just going to, it makes, even though there's regulations and rules, those rules and regulations will become looser and looser, because the minute they open Pandora's box, you can't close it again.
I would agree. The progress is great, but I think that can be learned from other countries, other states like California that have gone legal is, and this is in regards to the whole EU, I guess, not just Germany. There are the medical market right now in the EU is about 230 million. With expected growth to maybe 2 or 3 billion in the next few years. but the illicit market right now is 8 to 12 billion. That's right now. So something going legal is great progress, but it doesn't wipe away the massive market that exists. So it's really, the key is finding a way to transition that customer to the new legal market so that you don't have, naysayers say, look, the legal market didn't work, the illicit market's, thriving, and now we have two issues to handle. And I firmly believe that it takes a few things. One, basically comfort for that person, convenience, trust, and price. That's for the customer that was, spending the 8 to 12 billion in the illicit market. Now they need to have that comfort when they go into the store. They need to learn something. They need to feel good about the purchase. They need to have convenience. It needs to be easier than calling their connection. And they have to have trust that the product is, what it says, what it was tested, and that the price is within reason of what they were getting. So in California, we had a huge market already, and then rolled this over. Now we have 40% tax. People are like, hey, I'll just get it from my friend that grows in their backyard. And then you have the big investment that took place. Can't pay back the investments. The illicit market's thriving. So then the legal market's basically subsidizing themselves with the illicit market.
Do you think if you had transitioned the operators as opposed to trying to transition the customers, you would have had more success as the operators are already, fulfilling their market share?
With California, that was the problem. We already had the operators. And we had 4 times as many operators as we had retail outlets, and we still have that. So California's producing about 5 times more product every day than is sold.
That same bottleneck's going to happen here because of the clubs.
Yeah, and that's where I really think in Germany and the EU in general, it's making sure that there's enough convenience, retail outlets, social clubs, whatever the licensing process is making sure that there's enough of those per demographic, per municipality, and that the country or the country's government has the control. In California, the local municipalities trump the state licensing. So you have different local municipalities that just said, no, we don't want it. And
which is something that
now we took away the
here.
Convenience.
We already heard about the Bavarian fear earlier in a couple of panels, and it's in the conversations. And I would take this couple of mentions that you guys made already and ask you the next questions would be, what are your major fears when it comes to the potential downfalls for the I wouldn't even call it legalization, the decriminalization process in Germany at the moment? What are the things that really you think could go really wrong? For example, for me, the abstract nature of some of the legislation when it comes to the social clubs, the limitations, the fact that a lot of the weed that will be produced there will not be of the quality that you mentioned, the questions about how they actually make a profit, because they have to make a profit somehow, and essentially forcing them to use sideway streets to actually make that profit, the limits when it comes to 100 meters from schoolyards. All of these kind of issues are major alarm bells in my head about how that can be derailed. And also, of course, in my mind, politics is something that hasn't really been discussed. In my mind, according to the latest information we have, the governing coalition most likely will lose power in the next election, which is not very far away. What would happen with the next government? Would they continue down that path, or could they potentially use the shortcomings of this law to actually postpone any other meaningful change down the line? So these are the kind of questions in my mind. What would be the things that kind of worry you most about the changes now, if there are any? We can start again here.
So for me, like in the US, when I look over there, we have a lot of issues with just the government, like they're setting a really high tax, or they just put rules that are not really, like they don't make sense for us as producers. It makes it almost impossible for us. So that's really like the biggest fear, is just that whoever's in charge of making the laws and regulations, that they don't make them uneducated, like make them just throwing things out there, because that's a lot of the things that happen. It's we all notice coming from the processing side that whoever's making these laws is lacking some education in how the things are made. So if we were able to maybe establish a connection there to help these lawmakers make better decisions. I think that can be avoided because that's mainly the biggest problem. Like he was saying, that we have a black market that's thriving in California, and it's because of that, because the laws make it really hard for the legal market to thrive, and compete with the black market, who doesn't have any of these restrictions.
I think laws are very hard to reverse. They're also very hard to enact. There was a lot of people who are now very passionate and have put their bet in on legalization. I don't think you need to worry about a new party coming in and changing everything. I think what you may see is actually a better approach where they see some pieces of the system broken and affect quicker and more accurate change. Over the last 5 years of legalization in Canada, we've had quite poorly written policy, put a lot of handcuffs on movement, specifically like I make extraction products. We call that legalization 2.0 in Canada because they had to write it into the law 3 years later. That's a massive failure. That's now 27% of market share. It's always outpacing combustibles. It's a very important part that should be introduced right away. So I would say, no, I wouldn't worry at all about my government talking. But if anyone, I hope this is a room full of activists like I was, like Marcus was, you need to talk to your local government. Whoever is your person in local government, municipal, provincial, state, federal, whatever it is, you need to actively have conversations with those people. They all have an email on their website. They all have an assistant. They all run for your vote. We all live in democracies. That's how this law was passed in the first place. Having that open and honest conversation about your consumption, your family's consumption, your business is what these people take to their job at work every day and talk about those people that they represent. So the most important thing you can do is continue that conversation. And that's how these laws don't get reversed. I think it'll only up from here. I think Germany's actually really set a standard in the center of the EU with how strict it is here. This was a huge, not a surprise to me because the rumblings have been going on for a long time. There's been a lot of amazing medical activists here that, the plant and medicine is what gets you to legalization, and never forget that as we all look at the opportunity of it. This is a medicine and people fought for that. So keep fighting for that, and whatever that helps you with, do it. So don't look backwards, only forwards.
Yeah, I would suggest that people don't stop with their civil disobedience, because Germany didn't just wake up yesterday or a couple weeks ago and decide that they were going to legalize cannabis. Like, people fought tooth and nail for that and took that to get it. And we did the same thing in Canada. So they won't get it right away, but it is forward motion thinking. And the things that bother you, what happened in Canada for the most part, which was unfortunate, was that when people got their licenses, that suddenly they were like, oh my God, I have a license to grow cannabis, to process cannabis, to sell these different products. Like, it was such a crazy feeling that all the activists immediately stopped with all of their activism, because they were like, well, I got to protect my license. Like, this license is worth millions of dollars. I can sell weed. And so that unfortunate aspect will probably happen here as well. So I do speak to the true activists in the crowd. You need to maintain your civil disobedience, because none of this was given to us. We had to take it.
Well said. I would agree with what they all said. I don't know the German legislation or the law that well. What I do know is what's happening in the U.S. Is now we have 26 different legal cannabis laws, because we have states, and it's cannabis is a state's issue. So there's 26 states in the U.S. where legal adult use cannabis can take place. And every one of those is different. Some are drastically different. Who can own the licenses, how many licenses there are, how many licenses there's not. So what could be learned is having consistencies in the legislation, and just, taking from us as an example, if the federal government legalizes cannabis, it is going to be a major mess, because we already have 26 ways of doing it. And how are those 26 ways going to mold into this new one way or things like that? So staying consistent and being very patient with the process, because at the end of the day, it's a great win. It was legalized. Enjoy the win and just kind of roll with the punches.
And beyond the punches and the activism and everything that we have to continue doing, as you all said, and I fully agree with. In terms of more practicalities, you are all veterans of the scene for a very long time, and you've been there from the beginning until the branded future. What changes in the terms of formats of products or occasions or the way people consume it have you witnessed over the last decade or two? I mean, for example, the transition away from combustibles that was already mentioned, the rise of concentrates, the potential for edibles or beverages. Have you seen specific things that potentially could also be of relevance to everyone in the audience today, giving them a glimpse of the future of cannabis once it finds its way legally? You can start the other way now, just to
I'll talk on that. We primarily now we're a flower brand. That's our bread and butter, indoor flower. 3-4 years ago in California, the extracts and the pins went gangbusters, had the best growth, and that stalled out. And now, still to this day, 65% of sales in California are flower, and the other fastest growing market is pre-rolls, rolled up flower. So we then kind of came back to staying with flower, and it just seems that yes, there's all kinds of wonderful new options, and I definitely agree on the medical side that the extracts is 100% the way to go, but just the data and the sales just keep showing that combustible flower is not going anywhere, at least in California.
Yeah, no, I would completely agree. I will say from my perspective of really sort of pioneering water hash back in the very early days that I was around a time where you saw some dry sift, you saw some pressed hash from Lebanon and Morocco and Afghanistan and Nepal, but you just didn't see like the quality that suddenly came to be when water extraction came onto the market. And so that sort of opened up the gates. It's taken a long time. I mean, it took a very long time to see it grow and change. We're still a small percentage. Like, there's no doubt that flower is king. But in reality, regardless of what it is, you're always smoking or vaporizing or using the hash. So the modality of what it is fine with me. I mean, I think the future. Who can say what will happen? I also agree with Tyler that flower is not going anywhere. But extracts will continue to grow, and so will edibles and beverages, and we'll just have to hopefully be here to see it play out.
Love it. Well, my company makes future weed, future hash, e-weed, any way I can describe it to people. Like Marcus said, the modality doesn't matter. I want you to be able to consume it. I keep talking about combustible flower versus reduced risk. This is just parroting tobacco vernacular, to be very honest with you. These products, for me, break down stigma. It's very easy for me to sit on stage, smoke this pen. Wasn't intrusive on anybody in the audience. You could barely smell it. This to me is what the future of these products are, because you can travel around the world with them. You can have them in your pocket very easily. You know, in Canada, we see soccer moms enjoying this instead of a glass of Chardonnay now. There's a lot of progress to cannabis, and thanks to Marcus for doing everything with bubble bags. The first time I ever made hash, I was 16 years old. I watched a George Cervantes video, and I had a 5-gallon bucket, and I made some pretty bad hash, and I've gotten better at it over the years because there are some tricks. But we're smoking future weed right now. This is an electronic dab rig with amazing concentrates that were extracted using really cool machines engineered in Canada that are, using different pressures and different temperatures to take some of the best parts of the cannabis plant. And flower's going nowhere. I still love smoking joints every day, but I can't smoke a joint in here. And so I want every option, and I'm just here to deliver those options around the world. So that's the future for me.
Yep, I agree with what everyone said here. I mean, touching on the point there, I want to highlight one of the experiences I had was seeing that, for example, where the industry is kind of stalling out. We have the same products all across the board now, and there's really not much new things going on. So in order for you to push that boundary forward and create more like future products, you want to think outside the box and look at everything as like it's all about wax all day. You got to just be obsessed with it. So for me, an example was one time I remember I was with my girlfriend and we went into the makeup store. She wanted to buy some makeup, And while I was looking at the stuff there, I noticed the consistency was very similar to the extract already. And then it just clicked on me. I'm like, well, I can probably use any of these containers here to create a whole new product that would be a new way to consume. So what I did is I took a lip gloss container, an empty one. I put oil in there, and it worked perfectly to twist the bottom and push the oil out to infuse joints. So from there, I came out with a product called Blunt Brush. So just thinking like that outside the box too, where like everything in your everyday life, you got to compare it and see, can I create a similar product to it? Because after all, it's still just a plant, you know. There's a lot of plants in the world that we all use to create different products. So we got to just stop thinking that it's something different. It's really similar, and we can apply it to a lot of the current market that are out there and create similar products.
I think we covered most of the key kind of points when it comes to this kind of transition that we talk about. I have another personal one because also of my background in the alcohol industry and realizing a long time ago the importance of social consumption in alcohol. And social consumption in alcohol was also what broke the stigma back in the prohibitionary years, and the essential element of beverage as a totemic central point in the ritual of socialization. So my question for you would be, how do you see cannabis playing in that field? I know that in North America, over the last couple of years, the first social consumption lounges or on-trade establishments or whatever we call them started appearing. Do you see more of that? Do you see it as an essential part of this transition as well? Social consumption, not just smoking joints or dabs at home with friends, but actually places that facilitate exactly that could be part of this narrative.
I could talk about it. So in Vegas right now, there's the New Woo Club, and then there's another club that they just opened, and they found that people love the cannabis drink. So it's like going to a bar, but you get the 2% THC, the 5% THC mocktail, and you chop it up like that. But there's also smoking lounges. San Francisco is full of them. The rules are tricky everywhere. Like in Arizona, you can't buy any cannabis at the social lounge, but you're allowed to sit there and you can rent a bong, and they have exotic, overpriced snacks that you can enjoy because you got to pay for it somehow. But they used to have one in Vancouver too, where it was like $10 for an hour or $20 for the day. Still there.
Listen, I opened mine in Vancouver in 2003.
Right.
I had the Melting Point, which was a vaporization bar, and I'd love to be able to speak on this because the importance of us needing to gather and consume together, not as friends, but as public and strangers, is so important.
That's how you make friends.
And I've spoken to this in the past, that when alcohol went to pubs and the working labor people would go and enjoy the beers, those conversations that they had would shape, these are the people that are building the world. Their conversations would shape the world. And next came the tea houses, and now these were intellectuals drinking teas, and the conversations they were having in those tea houses would shape the world. And then came coffee, and people are all overproductive and drinking their coffee and having conversations that are shaping the world. It's our turn to shape the world.
We're going to shape the world of snacks and new ways to kick back.
And weed drinks.
Yeah. Fancy. We have maybe 3 or 4 minutes left. Do you want to do some questions? Do people have a question? One person has a question. 2 people have a question. All right. We'll start here, and then we'll go to there, and then that'll be it. Fantastic. Thank you. Let's hear it for the panel, by the way.
Hi, nice to have you all here. My question would be, do you see where is the reason why German government want to play now this regulation about extracts in the, for example, in Vereins, that it should be solventless, should be just old school hashish, and maybe some hot press, but no diamonds, no crazy solvents and blah. But do you see where's the reason for that? Do you see those new extracts coming? They are more dangerous. They could be, maybe nobody knows what is those extracts you bringing from USA, some crazy diamonds with the sources and like shit like that. We want to see natural flower, real hashish. When I was last time in Chicago a few months ago, I was trying to buy some dirty hashish like we smoke here in Europe, just like black Afghan or something. They were like, what the fuck is this? We don't even have this, so.
Yeah, they just need to be educated. We make real hash. We make very safe products. We run thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars of lab tests. To say that the products we make aren't safe is just a miseducation. Understandably, that there are other products that can be solventless. Marcus definitely prefers a solventless product, where I'm a solvent producer. We both share a lane, and there's a lane for every specific product and product type, and it's important to meet everybody's demand.
I would also say a lot of that has to do with the optics too, right? I mean, if you're smoking a little hash joint, you roll it with a 9-o'clock tobacco or whatever, that's cool. But when you see a bunch of guys with their giant rigs and their fat torches and they're sitting around zonked out of their minds,
But my
it looks
pen isn't
really
that.
more like you're doing drugs than it looks like
It's
you're
definitely a
smoking
part of
weed.
the stigma.
Part of
There's
the
no
culture,
doubt about it. And so
I'm not saying that it's a bad thing. I'm saying it's the optics of it.
Another part of those optics and that stigma is that there are, of course, companies that could come in like Andrew's and make completely safe products. But if you ever look up like people dying from hash, it's because they blew up in their house doing it at home the incorrect way, and they created a negative stigma on the product.
Yep.
If Germany's going to catch up to North America in this, sorry, if Germany's going to catch up to North America, what are some modernization? What are some policies that we should be selling to our MLAs or our government representatives?
Access.
Yeah, access. The social club is the bottleneck here.
You got to access the customer, the patient, what have you.
We have time for one more question. There's a microphone right
Big
over there,
money
right
will help
behind
the
you.
growers, unfortunately.
There you go. Up there. Do you see it? Is that a microphone?
That's
Am I
the
crazy?
transition.
Okay.
It just has to happen.
One more question. Here we go.
Greetings. I just wanted to say that I'm an owner of a laboratory analysis lab, and I can confirm that solventless extracts can match any extracts done with a solvent. So depending on the quality and the technique applied, it's actually all the same. So
Well, wait until they find out that all of the terpenes are hydrocarbons in the solventless hash. So solventless is a misnomer at best. And then what are they going to do when they figure that out? When they're like, oh, we're not allowing solvents. It's like, really? Well, D-limonene is a solvent, and it's in my weed.
I think one thing for everyone to understand here is that, and it was mentioned in the previous panel, that it's not a pharmaceutical conversation, it's a political conversation. So many of these decisions are not based on actual pharmaceutical data because the product is the same, but it's on optics, political optics. So looking tough on drugs, or the fact that many of these products have a THC content of 80%, so it sounds high, and let's not allow people to do this kind of thing. So I think we have to separate politics from pharmaceutical background or reality in that sense.
Yeah, it's always the optics. Hey, we're out of time, but that was fantastic. Let's hear it again for the panel. And I think...